Welcome to Spiritual Steps, a podcast about learning to pray, listen, and grow by taking small steps on the spiritual journey. I'm your host, Stephen Hovatter, and this is episode 15, Stepping Towards Community. It's a beautiful day here in Middle Tennessee, and it's been kind of really dry around here lately, but we've gotten this just kind of soothing thunderstorm moving through, and you may catch a little bit of that on the recording, and it's just been beautiful to me to hear this rolling, long thunder come through our sleepy little town. Hey, listen, for most of human history, people were born into community, into these networks of relationships that more or less static over time. Now, it's not always true. Of course, there are times and places where those relationships are more flexible, even fleeting, and certain types of living conditions bring about new environments for those relationships and kind of these changing patterns. And for instance, moments in history where people have to go through these great migrations and move from one place of living to another that's like creates all this kind of disruption. You think about like the story of the exile in the biblical history, there's this huge disruptive thing that had to like fracture all these relationships and create new and different ones. And then, you take things like just the development of like urbanization in our time, and those patterns become somewhat different, those patterns of relationships. And in our present moment, I think we find ourselves shifting communities, shifting between communities, and sometimes left grasping for what kind of community we can collect around ourselves. And you have this really strange environment where you have in communities like really local, hyper-local things. Like that's one movement in our society right now, is this hyper-locality, where you're super involved with what's happening just in your neighborhood or what's around you. Or, on the other side of things, we see these niche communities collecting online where people interested in something really, focused, these really focused groups of focused interest are kind of connecting with people that have those same interests, all across the world. And so, it's like a fascinating turn of events. Like you have this hyper-locality, but also this globalization kind of at work, both at the same time. And really both of those are expressions of our need, our real desire for relational connection, and not just one-on-one connections, but I think really community connections. So in our time, I think one of the significant spiritual steps that people can take is the step of moving towards a spiritual community. Now, sometimes that happens really passively. You're near a community and it pulls you in, and people invite you to stuff, and they reach out to you in certain ways. And then there's other these times where it's up to you to kind of push a couple of buttons and pull a couple of levers to create the kind of community that will feed and nourish your spiritual life. Right? I mean, there are these times now, because we move around on the stuff, that you may not just kind of automatically be a part of a spiritual community. You may have to go seeking one, or to maybe even create one. And in that space, you have to be more active. Like there's this active role that you have to take so that you can craft this kind of community that's going to feed your spiritual life, and which will also give you a role and responsibility for contributing to the lives of other people in that community, in that group. And then there's this other factor, right? There's not only are there like these active and passive moments in stepping towards community, but there's, everybody does this differently. This is part of what makes it really hard to teach on in the church. Like in, my role as a preacher, it's hard for me to say these are the 5 steps for stepping towards community, because, different people participate in community in different ways. And some are more gregarious people that they kind of give energy to a group's presence. They make everybody laugh, and they're just, they kind of have that kind of life to them. And then other people have this like settled depth to them, and they kind of anchor a group, and they give the group a sense that not only is something fun happening, but something meaningful. And then there are other people who have this kind of real skill of connecting other people together, and they kind of function as a glue. They do this social coordination kind of thing and help provide that sort of experience for everyone. They kind of work to build the bridges between people. And that's all of those different ways are like perfectly valid ways of entering into community. And each of those types of people and the myriad other ways of doing it are, those kinds of folks may do this differently. They may step towards community a little bit differently. So, no matter whether you're in a moment that's requiring you to be a really active community builder or you're allowed to be a passive one, or whether you're a person who's built as an introvert or an extrovert or something in between that has different kinds of skills of community, developing your understanding, no matter what of those circumstances are yours, developing your understanding of what it means to walk towards community is an important intentional step that I want to invite you to take. And as a part of that, I want to offer you just kind of a sketch of what it means to build community, what that is in kind of this overall view. And then in the next episode, I want to offer some just really practical advice about things that you can do, to walk towards community. Okay, so here's what I want to say. The heart of what this podcast is about is just this idea about community. And it's simply this. Community is built on what we hold in common. It's built on sharing what we share. And so I want to offer you 3 things that we share when we build community that are part of the process of community building. And then I want to kind of give you a key to what it means to share those things. And then we'll be done for the day. So the first thing that I want to say, that we hold in common, that we share together, is that if you want to step towards community, you have to share time. And the key to that as a practice is intentionality. All right, so the super low-down, dirty secret about the best tip I've got for like building community is so stupid easy. It's simply this: get digits. Like, you have to have a way of communicating with somebody else so that you can, like, share time with them. And until you do that, man, all the good intention in the world won't really get you anywhere. So, but when you have a way of connecting with somebody and you take this intentional step of, like, creating space, creating time that you're going to share together in some way, and it doesn't really matter what that is, then you're taking this step of building community because you're sharing that fundamental thing. Time. When you share time, you step towards building community. The second thing, though, is maybe just a little bit different, very similar, and that is shared experiences. When you share an experience with somebody else, then you create community too. Now, you can't share experiences and marked ones, important, significant ones, without the habit of spending time, right? So when you spend time, you kind of develop that intentionality. You over time, you begin to build something more significant, and that is shared experiences. And an experience is like this moment. What I mean by that is like a moment that has weight and significance to it. Okay? And that doesn't mean it's necessarily heavy, although certainly those kinds of moments are important too. The experience of sharing grief with somebody, for instance, or sharing a dilemma that they're trying to make some discerning judgment about, and you kind of share that with them, share that experience of going through that process. Those are, these heavy kinds of moments, but it might be these moments where you feel free and you laugh and you just realize that this is, your life has vigor and importance, and you're doing that with somebody else. That's kind of experience that I'm talking about. And you might have to log a lot of hours with somebody before you have those kinds of things, those kinds of weighted experiences, but they're significant. And there is something you can do, though, while you're in that time to, kind of increase the likelihood that shared time becomes shared experience. And that is really push towards being fully present and attentive in the moment. So when we share time together, the more that we're distracted, the more that we are thinking about what's going to happen the next day, or the more that we're staring at our phones or something like that, the more unlikely it is that we actually convert that shared time to shared experiences. But when we invest with presence and attention, then just the the important things begin to kind of come to the surface. And so there you go. We share time, we share experience. We do those with intentionality and presence. And then the last one, the third thing is shared memories. And of course, this is you kind of see this is like cumulative, right? So as we share time, as we share experience, then those things become converted to memories. And they become these anchor points of our relationship with somebody. Relationships have a history. A community has a history. It's been lived over time. There's no instant community, okay? It always has this history to it. Now, that history may just be a few days, okay? But you have to have, before you can really have a community, you have to have some shared time, some shared experience, and those things have to have coalesced into shared memory. And the only tip that I really have for that, okay, is that the key for that is that you make space for remembering. So you intentionally create the time itself, right? You intentionally create the time itself, and you invest yourself with presence and attention in that time so that it becomes experience. But then afterwards, you make space for remembering, and that begins to convert this to a shared memory. We're not just saying remembering as an internal affair, like when you're calling something into your mind from your long-term memory into your short or into your current moment memory. What I mean is that space of say with your friend, hey, remember what happened yesterday, or man, that was crazy when this happened, or hey, that was really meaningful when we had this conversation and I appreciate it. Like those kinds of things are part of what it means to make space. Those kinds of conversations make space for remembering. And when they do that, it helps convert that shared time, that shared experience into shared memories. You got shared memories, you got a community, okay? Because community is built on what we hold in common, what we share. And when you've been able to intentionally put yourself with a person or with a group of people and do that with presence, and then over time you can call out the meaning of that by remembering particular moments in it, then you're beginning to hold something very significant in common. You're beginning to share something pretty important. And before you know it, this is what it has meant to build community, okay? And you kind of look back in this, the communities that have been significant to you, right? Can't you kind of see this trajectory of time, experience, memory? You kind of see that, how it develops, how that community builds up. Well, one last thing, and just one last thing of sharing before we close up, is to say that there's this other bit, and that is shared language. If you share language, okay, on top of the time, experience, memory, then that language is like a signal of belonging to other people. Okay, there's just nothing in the world like a group of people who have not just time, experience, memory, but who also have some sort of language that they use to refer to certain things. And that may sound kind of, I don't know, silly, but I'm telling you, you got common language between people that is just like what you and those other people call something. And it's a powerful way of like sealing your relationship and the community that you share together. So that's what I got for you today. Community is built on what we hold in common, what we share. So share time. Let that time develop into experiences. Let those experiences develop into memories. Infuse your participation in those relationships with intentionality and presence and memory, remembering, and you're on the journey towards the practice of spiritual community, and it's one of the most significant practices that you can engage in the Christian faith. So defeat your fear of sharing, okay, and reach towards community. It's totally worth it. That's all for this episode of Spiritual Steps. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back soon with a new episode, and it's going to be about just really practical things that you can do to build community. Until then, keep taking the next step that you see in front of you, and I hope it's reaching out towards somebody, towards a person or a group to build community with them. May God be with you on each and every step of your journey. Peace.